A tech to who to what? All I know is I've been pre-funding your
2025 was a year in which we were presented with great movies that really touch us. But this video isn't about those films. Grab your popcorn and enjoy the 10 worst films of 2025. 10. Captain America: Brave New World. In the 10th spot on our countdown of the biggest film disappointments of 2025, we have Captain America: Brave New World. This supposed blockbuster arrives with a profoundly mediocre meta score of 42. The plot centers on Sam Wilson, now fully embracing the mantle of Captain America, as he navigates a complex political landscape under the newly elected President Thaddeus Ross. Sam is quickly thrust into a conspiracy after a White House event goes wrong, forcing him to work with the government institution he has reasons to distrust to clear the name of the forgotten captain, Isaiah Bradley, while facing the threat of a returning classic villain, the Leader. The overwhelming argument for why this film is a structural and thematic failure is rooted in its inability to balance political ambition with compelling execution, leaving it an overstuffed and confused mess. One of the central criticisms is that the film has the frayed tailoring of a movie marked by reshoots and changes. The writing is stiff and the ensemble is mostly charmless, while the visuals are slapdash. This lack of polish results in a movie that feels like a confused and shallow mess, a giant slot machine. Most damningly, the film's attempts to address the challenging political questions introduced in the prequel series, namely, why a black man would align with a historically anti-black system, fall completely flat, ultimately creating a story that is feckless, spineless, and an unforgivable missed opportunity to explore Sam's dilemmas with any real depth. In essence, Brave New World is a tedious, overplotted blockbuster that buckles under the weight of its own franchise lore and its inability to be as radical as the sensitive topics it introduces demand. 9. A Minecraft movie. Dropping into the 9th position of our worst films of 2025 is a Minecraft movie, landing with a poor meta score of 45. The convoluted plot centers on two parallel worlds: the blocky overworld, where the creative-minded Steve and his wolf Dennis get separated from an all-powerful cube-shaped orb by the joy-hating piglin Malgosha, and the human world, where an outcast teen, Henry, his sister Natalie, a realtor named Dawn, and a washed-up gamer Garrett eventually stumble into the magical portal with the orb in tow, leading to an inevitable cube-filled quest. The consensus argument for the film's failure is that it is a corporate mess that betrays the very spirit of the game it's based on by prioritizing cheap humor and formula over imagination. As one critic notes, the most dispiriting aspect is how the movie fails to spark the imagination, betraying a core tenet of the game on which it's based. Instead of fostering world building and experimental play, the film relies on a plot that is the kind of formulaic brand extension tale a writer could pitch while in a coma. The film struggles to find the right balance, with irony and poignant moments failing to gel, while the director's attempt to inject personality often falls flat, leading to a film described simply as imbecilic green screen gunk. Ultimately, a Minecraft movie is a disappointing, overstuffed product that lacks narrative clarity, creative vision, and genuine stakes, leaving the audience feeling like they are watching an extended, self-aware commercial rather than a heartfelt adventure. 8. The Electric State. Sinking into the 8th spot is The Electric State, a spectacularly expensive Netflix misfire from directors Anthony and Joe Russo, burdened with a miserable meta score of 30. Set in an alternate 1990s America that recently survived a devastating war against a sentient robot population, the plot follows the teenage rebel Michelle on a post-apocalyptic road trip. She journeys through a desolate landscape, accompanied by an illegal bot named Kid Cosmo, who she believes contains the consciousness of her presumed dead little brother. Along the way, she teams up with the disillusioned ex-soldier Keats and his sidekick Robot, all while seeking the truth behind the war and the powerful tech mogul Ethan Skate. This film is an epic waste of resources is that it is a derivative and shockingly tedious mess that proves the Russo brothers cannot consistently deliver outside the MCU structure. Despite the money poured into the visuals, the film fails to capture the emotional depth of its source material, and the action sequences are hollow. The critics also uniformly attack the narrative's lack of originality and execution, describing the plot as a watered-down grab bag of old, tired ideas that is confusing and poorly written. It constantly attempts to copy the tone and themes of successful sci-fi works, from The Terminator to Spielberg classics, but without any coherence. Finally, the performances were slammed, with the main characters being painfully underdeveloped. The film is a clear example of a bloated production enterprise, where the quality of the resulting product was secondary to the star power and image of the directors. 7. Opus. Taking the 7th spot on our list of the year's worst is Opus, the A24 horror misfire about fame and cults, which stumbled out of the gate with a disappointing meta score of 42. The premise is intriguing. Alfred Moretti, a massively reclusive 1990s pop star, emerges after 3 decades to invite a handful of hand-picked journalists and influencers, including the ambitious young writer Ariel, to his remote western compound for an exclusive album listening weekend. What begins as a golden ticket opportunity quickly reveals itself to be a nightmare, as Moretti's isolation has fostered a terrifying murderous cult bent on revenge and control. The fundamental argument for this film's failure is that despite a promising premise and a talented cast, the execution is heavy-handed, utterly predictable, and ultimately tedious, collapsing into a grotesque genre pile-up. Critiques unanimously point out the film's clunky handling of its themes, noting that the messages are delivered with the subtlety of a sledgehammer, and the entire thriller is a clunky, heavy-handed, unfunny, toothless pileup of genres on the cinematic freeway. After spending too much time on underdeveloped characters and tedious setup, the film wobbles in its final act, becoming a grim, predictable, and not very bright horror film. Opus ultimately fails to be what it intended to satirize, devolving from an intriguing social critique into an unbearable slog with an unsatisfying ending. 6. Snow White. Sliding in at number 6 is one of the year's most anticipated and ultimately most reviled remakes, Snow White, scraping by with a middling meta score of 50. This live-action fantasy follows orphan princess Snow White as she flees the clutches of her wicked stepmother, the evil queen, finding unlikely sanctuary with a group of mystical miners and revolutionaries. The narrative was heavily marketed as a modern take, shifting the focus from Snow White waiting for a prince to becoming a strong, self-reliant leader. Unfortunately, the critical reception was brutal, pointing to a film that is fundamentally broken in its design. The first critical failure lies in the visual execution and the corporate attempts to correct problematic elements of the original. Disney performed the most corporate response possible, replacing the 7 dwarves with uncanny CGI caricatures instead of casting actors with dwarfism and dismantling stereotypes. Furthermore, the film is visually disastrous and tonally compromised. The final, unforgivable sin is the systematic dismantling of the source material. Every modification, from the forced power ballad songs to the erasure of the core love story, every modification fails to improve the tale, and the whimsy and wonder of fairy tales are missing, left the audience with a feckless, spineless film that honored neither the original nor the goal of genuine modernization. 5. Love Hurts. Landing squarely in the 5th spot is Love Hurts, a tired action comedy that serves as a painful reminder that even Oscar-winning talent can't salvage a poor script, reflected by its abysmal meta score of 34. Set awkwardly around Valentine's Day, the film introduces us to Marvin, a mild-mannered suburban real estate agent who is secretly an ex-hitman. His carefully constructed and normal life is shattered when Rose, his former mobster love interest, whom he faked the death of years ago, returns seeking revenge against Marvin's crime boss brother Knuckles. Marvin is then forced to revert to his lethal past to protect Rose and himself from Knuckles' goofy collection of henchmen. The fundamental critique against Love Hurts is that it is a lazy, formulaic, and highly derivative film that fails to execute the action or the romance it promises. The movie is transparently a desperate attempt to copycat the success of modern action hits like Nobody and Violent Night. The script is fully padded with lazy, pointless repetition, with characters speaking in long expository stretches rather than demonstrating chemistry or motivation. In short, Love Hurts is a predictable, charisma-free mess that makes the viewer feel the pain its title suggests. 4. The Strangers, Chapter 2. Taking the 4th spot on our list of cinematic duds is The Strangers, Chapter 2, a horror sequel that completely misunderstood the chilling appeal of its predecessor, earning a dismal Metascore of 28. The plot picks up immediately after the first chapter, with the survivor, Maya, rushed to a remote hospital only to realize the masked killers, the Scarecrow, Dollface, and Pinup Girl, have followed her to finish the job. Maya spends the entirety of the film running, hiding, and escaping through the abandoned hospital and the rural town of Venus, while the film attempts to expand the mythology of the killers. The near unanimous argument for why this middle installment fails so spectacularly is that it completely is a complete miscalculation of what made these movies terrifying and interesting in the first place. The core terror of the original The Strangers was that the violence was random. This trilogy jettisons that terrifying ambiguity by making the violence a personal, motivated hunt for a loose end, which is exactly the opposite of what the franchise needed. Critiques lambasted the film's structure, which director Rennie Harlan confuses with tension, resulting in scenes that go on for far too long and equate to Maya taking her time to find a hiding spot. A killer comes in, and at the worst possible time, she makes the slightest noise. Worst of all, the film commits the cardinal sin of introducing a ridiculous and entirely unasked for origin story, attempting to explain the killers through a still incoherent mishmash of ghost stories, urban legends, slasher tropes, and straight theft from the far superior Halloween 2. The absurdity peaks when the protagonist is inexplicably chased around the forest for 20 minutes by a giant CGI hog, a bizarre addition that highlights the script's desperate attempt to throw everything at the wall. Ultimately, the movie is a grueling, overstretched exercise in pointless mayhem, leaving the audience with the true horror that there's another couple of hours of this still to come. 3. Smurfs. Climbing the ranks of cinematic catastrophes to land in the 3rd spot is Smurfs, an animated musical disaster that proves certain franchises are better left to memory, achieving a dismal Metascore of 31. This latest iteration follows an original character, No Name, the only Smurf who lacks a defined talent or thing in Smurf Village. His quest for a raison d'etre is accelerated when Papa Smurf is kidnapped by Razamel, the evil brother of Gargamel, forcing No Name, Smurfette, and the rest of the generic Smurf cast on a high-stakes cross-country rescue mission. The primary critique focuses on the film's baffling decision to turn the Smurfs into a modern musical, with critics noting that the new songs are dreadfully out of place. Most of the numbers are uncomfortable club beats and eardrum-busting downers. Rihanna, as Smurfette, is especially lifeless, and Corden's performance of his sappy pop ballad about searching for purpose is interminably earnest. Furthermore, the film's attempts at humor and modernization are painfully dated, filled with a garbage bag's worth of modern jokes that are already beyond tired in 2025, including tired gags about unmuting Zoom calls and asking for good LinkedIn ratings. Visually, the film fails despite employing a trendy 2D and 3D hybrid style, resulting in a look that just looks cheap, failing to seamlessly integrate the characters into the world, and making the entire 90-minute runtime feel too long. 2. Hurry Up Tomorrow. We have arrived at the penultimate cinematic catastrophe of the year, occupying the second to last spot, Hurry Up Tomorrow, a grueling, self-indulgent vanity project that limps in with a brutal Metascore of 29. This experimental drama, co-written by and starring Abel Tesfaye and directed by Trey Edward Schultz, serves as a feature-length promotion for Tesfaye's final album under the Weeknd moniker. The plot follows the anguish of its star, referred to as Abel, a world-famous musician suffering from existential dread, severe vocal strain, and a recent breakup with a girlfriend only heard through angry voicemails. His emotional descent is interrupted by the enigmatic fan Anima, leading to a tense, psychological confrontation that forces him to face his internal demons. The overwhelming argument against this film is that it is a relentlessly pretentious and hollow ego trip, mistaking self-pity for profound artistic suffering. Critics found the film agonizing to sit through, being so devoid of humor and self-awareness that it makes similarly disastrous musician vehicles seem like masterpieces. The central thematic failure is Tesfaye's narcissistic portrayal of the artist. The film features endless, intense close-ups of Tesfaye crying, in his private jet, in the bathtub, in his hotel room, leading one critic to conclude that the star is giving a megaphone to a pitiful whiner in an abstract examination of adolescent self-pity. Furthermore, the film's attempts at profound symbolism are bludgeoning and obvious, with characters named Anima and and a plot that clumsily maps the singer's career narrative onto autofiction, forcing a transformation through the painful experience of watching a deranged fan dance to his own songs. As one critic points out, when the star is shown crying at the beauty of his own music, the introspection instantly turns into simple self-involvement. In the end, Hurry Up Tomorrow is a plodding, over-stylized, and utterly tedious exercise that provides no genuine insight or compelling drama, making it a spectacular failure of artistic vanity. 1. War of the Worlds. The undisputed champion of cinematic failure in 2025, taking the #1 spot, is War of the Worlds, an Amazon Prime Video original burdened with a shocking metascore of 6. Director Rich Lee's adaptation of H.G. Wells' classic is presented entirely in the screen life format, confining the global alien invasion to the computer desktop of Will Radford, a surly domestic terror analyst for the Department of Homeland Security. Will uses his vast access to the nation's surveillance grid primarily to check on his pregnant daughter and hacker's son. When aggressive extraterrestrial tripods emerge, Will must navigate a conspiracy and the immediate apocalypse through video calls, news reports, and most crucially, the very technology he monitors. The argument for this film's catastrophic failure is that it is a witless, low-effort execution that manages to botch its genre, its themes, and its star. Firstly, critics dismissed the screen life format as a terrible artistic choice, noting that what should have been a terrifying spectacle becomes blurry and unconvincing with low-res videos, and the entire scope of the apocalypse suffocated by Microsoft Teams. This poor filmmaking is compounded by a narrative confusion that fails its promise to explore modern anxieties. Instead of a thriller about privacy, the film is primarily about parenting, reducing global devastation to a backdrop for Will to learn he needs to let go of his grown-up children. This results in terrible dialogue, including the now infamous line, "Take your intergalactic asses back home." Most unforgivable, however, is the film's cynical corporate synergy. The entire plot devolves into a feature-length commercial for its distributor. The contrived conclusion sees the surveillance state become the hero, with the final plan relying entirely on an official order on Amazon to activate the drone to deliver the world's salvation. In every aspect, War of the Worlds is a baffling, low-quality disaster that uses a classic title to promote corporate products, earning it the distinction of being the most universally despised film of 2025. And to conclude our special on the 10 worst films of 2025, we arrive at the clear conclusion that the year was defined by high-budget disappointments, unnecessary adaptations, and movies that failed to deliver even the minimum required entertainment.